Lisa, how have you been? Crazy busy, but good.
Yeah.
You know the drill.
Yeah.
Friday went well. Everything works in the board meeting.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it did.
That was super stressful. Until it's like that.
Morning, Bill.
Your staff for today.
That nice.
Kind of.
You ever deal with all the nonsense I had to.
So Kurt, you gonna drive
Like
in
right
Friday?
yesterday?
No, I'm gonna be on the road up to the Bay Area.
Oh, Friday. Yeah. Would have held you a place.
Yeah.
The city of Los
And a
Angeles
plate.
say, go ahead, demo
Yeah,
this place.
There's hope. Yeah, they're always at a premium there, right?
We'll always have a spot for you.
56 fast enough.
Can, did we have monitoring data from?
I haven't heard back to see, I think we're monitoring still daily, so we should have the.
I was like 1 in 6 or something.
Oh, did it go down to 1 in 6? Maybe,
They closed, but still, even 1 in 6 would be better than nothing.
so I haven't heard back yet.
Very.
Pretty amazing.
It's a little frustrating. Buildings, how we have planning department, you're supposed to just come and see what we do. And, neither one of them would be talking to us, or the BTSC, or
It's not like it hasn't been reviewed, so
right.
it should be common.
Told someone yesterday, this is the last. I've got, if this would happen across the street, you know, the back there, I guess, and Michigan, it'd be on the front page of, CNN's website.
I just have a very short presentation.
Sold by 99 cent stores.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't think it's 99 cent stores been there forever. I don't know if it's 99 cent warehouse, if they sold the property to someone else to 600,000 square feet.
Question two, did we look at the
Right, I know.
I'm sure we would.
But I'm not even sure that so, you know, 600,000 square feet.
So they did that.
All right, so it looks like it's 10 o'clock. Let's call to order our May 10th, 2017 Home Rule Advisory Committee meeting here in CC8. We'll start by seeing who we have on the phone. Is ARB with us in Sacramento? Not yet. How about EPA? Amy, are you there? The phone looks like it's on. Anyone at SCAD? Compton Unified School District? Here's the real test. Steve? Something's not right. Riverside Transit? Nobody. What?
No, I'm here, Dr. Luke.
Larry, we had to get all the way to the bottom of the list to get to somebody here.
And I don't know the list comment, but yeah, we're here.
Okay, thank you. Why don't we go around the room? I'm Joe Liu, the governor's appointee on the AQMD board, and
Good morning, Jill Wynot, the Chief Operating Officer at South Coast AQMD.
Jane Joy with Eastern Municipal Water District. Terry Roberts with the American Lung Association, California.
Larry Smith, California Companies.
Bill Lamar, Executive Director of the California Small Business Alliance.
Good morning, Mark Olson with Gerdau.
Mike Downs, Downs Energy.
David Rothbart, Los Angeles County Sanitation Districts.
Dan McGivney, SoCal Gas.
Kurt Coleman, Southern California Air Quality Alliance.
Tyrone Turner, Dakota Communications.
Ann Scagliola, AQMD. Lisa Tanaka, Legislative and Public Affairs, AQMD.
Bill Long with General Counsel's Office.
so that takes care of this.
Joe Luke, can you hear me? I'm here too, it's Bill Quinn.
Oh, Bill, we didn't hear you earlier, but we hear you now.
I don't know, I think I had it on mute or something, but I'm here.
Okay, that's so reassuring.
I think today we're gonna hear from Lisa about outreach and stuff, so we'll get to that in a couple of minutes, but that takes care of agenda item number 1. We have the March 15th minutes. Did anyone have any corrections, observations, problems, issues? I was with Bill Lamar, because I know he reads these carefully.
It looks like they're their usual fine shape. There are 3 action items on there, and I just wondered if, Ann, have they been completed? Oh, then
So all 3 of the action items have been done now?
Yes.
There we go. Nothing to complain about. All right, so without any objections or anything, we'll consider these minutes approved. And ask again whether Amy has been able to join us from EPA.
ARB is on the line, Dr. Lou.
Great, because you're item number 4, which we're going to go to, because Amy's not here for item number 3. So is that you, Chris?
Yes, it is, Dr. Lou, but I also have Johnny Raymond in here with me, and he's going to be in training to eventually take over my spot. So I'm actually going to let him run this today.
Great.
With that out.
We ran into each other someplace recently, didn't we, Johnny?
Yes,
Yeah.
Dr. Lou, it was at the renewable natural gas event
Oh,
at the
right.
port.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, so we had a brief conversation about that fact. Why don't you go ahead?
Okay. So I'm going to be providing the ARB update, as you know, and so I'll just begin now. And so our next board hearing is on May 25th. That'll be here in Sacramento, and a couple of the items that we've been discussing is, for one, is the consideration, the approval of the strategy for compliance with US EPA's 111D, and that's for the landfill. And so what we plan to do for the state's plan, our commitments will be based on an existing landfill methane control measure, and that originally became effective back in 2010, and so that's what we plan to use to fulfill that requirement. In addition, we'll be considering the approval of the 2016 ozone SIP. That's for the Western Mojave non-attainment area, and that'll be a consent item. Now, in moving to beyond that board hearing, in the June through October timeframe, there are some items that we'll be hearing, and so one of those will be the ozone.
I was just telling Johnny he doesn't have to go through the whole list of all the other ones, but you can finish at least.
So the ozone SIP for the Imperial County. And then also we will be bringing the 2030 target scoping plan, and so this will be the third, the final hearing where we'll consider that plan. And so in the materials, you see a number of different items, including the portable ATCM. We'll be bringing the MRR back for another hearing, and so that's to align basically those requirements to better support our cap and trade program, and additional amendments to the cap and trade program as well. And then you'll see after that a number of additional SIP related items per area, including an additional, we see bringing the funding program for the low carbon transportation program. That has a tie-in with the GGRF money, how to spend those dollars. One thing that I also wanted to mention with our climate investments program, and that's the GGRF, we recently released on April 21st. We've been working closely with Cal EPA, and they released the new disadvantaged community designation, as well as an interactive map. So that's available on a new website, and I'm going to say that right now. So if you want to jot that down and check that out at a later time, it's www.caclimateinvestments.ca.gov. It's a user-friendly website, and I definitely recommend you checking that out at a later point in time. So that concludes my update. Are there any questions?
Anyone have any questions for Johnny? Johnny, just want to let you know, I met yesterday with a company called Keros Aerospace, and I think they've been talking to some ARB staff, but they've developed aerial methane monitoring capacity for finding hotspots, and they've been doing surveys in a lot of different places, including, I think they've been working with some ARB folks on this. But really interesting capacity to, find everything from oil field leaks, which they've seen tend to come from the tanks and not the actual pumping equipment, to dairy farms where they can actually see the cows.
Right.
And really interesting infrared type technology they developed, and they slap it on a Cessna and drive around, and you can cover very large areas very quickly. So.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting monitoring involved on that front. We're organizing here at ARB for a lot of the next generation air monitoring, and so this is the low cost sensors, and so our monitoring laboratory division is working on further developing that, but also working with you folks at South Coast, just because you folks have been ahead of the curve with that technology and deploying it and working with others to make it happen. Here at ARB, initially you brought up the oil leaks, and so the Liso Canyon, we were able to deploy that and demonstrate that we were able to respond to that emergency, but now we're trying to be taking a more proactive approach to try to identify hot spots in that area.
Yeah, and the nice thing with this technology is that they fly at 3,000 feet. You don't have to have a helicopter circling around time and time again to get a good picture.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really pretty interesting.
Very interesting.
Also on SB1, the in-use truck provision, I had the benefit of hearing from Cynthia Marvin a couple of weeks ago about ARB's interpretation of that, and understand that your lawyers and staff are writing up a memo for the district and the ports on how properly to interpret SB1 in-use provisions. If there's any follow-up or update on that, if we haven't got it by next time, I think we'd appreciate it.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Okay, good. Any other questions or comments, anyone? Great, I appreciate it, Johnny and Chris. Thank you for the update.
You're welcome.
I'm gonna check back, see if Amy's jumped on from EPA, or anyone from EPA.
Yes, I did. Hi, I
Great.
apologize for being late.
That's okay. We just missed you. We'll jump back to agenda item number 3. We were on 4. And just let us
Okay.
know if anything's going on there in Region 9.
Well, I just have a little bit to share with you, and then I am available for any questions that folks may have. First off, I just wanted to let everyone know that we are working with the district and ARB to resolve the sanctions clock that's related to our partial approval, partial disapproval of the 2006 PM 2.5 plan. That sanctions clock is ticking for November of this year. And so we're working to resolve some issues associated with that. And then additionally, we had proposed partial disapproval of the 2008 ozone rack tip late last year, and we're also working with the district and ARB on resolving issues associated with that. So we're hoping to take action to address the issues we identified on the rack tip here shortly. Additionally, we're in the process of reviewing the district's amendments to the reclaim program from the actions taken in 2015 and 2016, and we're planning to propose action on them shortly. Third, for the 2016 Air Quality Management Plan that the district adopted at the beginning of May, and the ARB adopted their state SIP strategy along with the SCAQMD just shortly. That was submitted to us. We received it in our office May 3rd, but I think the formal submittal date is April 27, 2017. So we're very excited about having that in-house and have begun review of that, both the ozone and PM 2.5 plans. We recognize that one of the fundamental components of that air quality management plan is the dependence on the voluntary and other mobile source actions. So to that end, a couple of us participated in the district's May 8th facility-based measures workshop and are doing whatever we can to continue to work with the district and stakeholders on the development of these measures and some other measures that will likely be needing SIP credit. And then just the last item that I would share is regarding implementation of EPA's 2015 ozone NAC, the National Ambient Air Quality Standard. So just by way of background, all the governors throughout the country have submitted their recommendations along with some tribal recommendations for designation. And we've been reviewing those recommendations and currently the new leadership at EPA is still deliberating on how they want to approach this ozone NAC. And until those deliberations are complete, we don't have any time frame I can share with you about the next milestones for designating the areas. And we'll let you know perhaps at the next meeting if that changes. So I will pause there and see if there are any questions about these items or anything else that I might be able to share with it.
Okay, any questions?
I have a question unrelated. Amy, this is Bill Lamar with the Small Business Alliance. I was just wondering, do you have any sense of the response to the President's Executive Order 13771, I guess, on reducing regulation and controlling regulatory costs? I think the public comment period ends the 15th, and I know that we're busily preparing comments. I guess that go to the Federal Register, but does EPA have any sense of what the response nationwide is?
Well, we've been receiving voluminous input, and we encourage that. I don't know if you were able to participate in any of the phone conferences that were set up by EPA, and we've received comments across the board on all of our programs. So I know the administration staff will be evaluating that and figuring out what that means for the agency. Additionally, we're looking at that executive order in the context of regulations that may have been proposed and other actions that we take on an annual basis, for example, with the renewable fuel standard. So I'd say stay tuned. I can't tell you anything more than that.
Is there can you tell us what the process is or what next steps will be after the close of the comment period?
Well, I can tell you what I know, which is limited, and that is at the end of the public comment period, the administration staff will be evaluating those comments, weeding through them, and then we'll figure it out from there. I really don't have anything more I can share with you on that.
So the administration gets it before EPA then?
Well, I'm saying the comments are coming to EPA.
Okay.
So we are part of the administration.
All right. Okay. But once EPA has finished the review process, what's the next step then? Does it go to congressional committee or?
Yeah, I would say stay tuned. There are clearly actions that the administrator Pruitt has the authority to take, as administered under the various acts. So, for example, with the Clean Air Act, there are clearly actions that Administrator Pruitt has been delegated or given authority by Congress. So he'll probably be looking at actions that he individually can take. If there are actions that would need congressional action, perhaps there would be some administration proposal out of the White House. You know, it's just way too early to tell.
Thank you.
David?
Amy, this is David Rothbard. A question for you. You're talking about the 2016 ozone EQMP. Kind of two questions. One is there any relative time frame for when EPA might provide approval or any kind of, comments back on that document?
Well, so I would answer that in a couple different ways. We have some statutory requirements for acting that we'll be meeting, but I would suggest that one of the first ones we're taking a look at is our proposed, not proposed, but our final action on the PM 2.5 2006 standard when we disapproved a part of that plan back in a year and a half ago. That would will most likely be acting on the individual standards that are, the SIPs for the individual standards that are contained in the AQMT. So we'll be taking a look at which standard does it make sense for us to act on first. And that likely may be the PM 2.5 standard for the 24-hour standard, perhaps followed by the ozone standard. But we haven't developed a specific agenda yet in terms of allocating our resources to moving forward. So we'll continue to participate in these meetings, and I'll update you as we go along.
Thank you. And then the other question, you talked about participating in the indirect source rule meeting the other day. And as far as the incentive-based measures, does EPA have any concerns about that approach? It sounded like part of the participation you're having is you may have some concerns that need to be addressed. Is that correct?
Yeah, I don't know. Were you able to be at the workshop on Monday?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, as you know, Wayne identified one of the key policy challenges will be for ensuring that the integrity elements that are needed to provide credit in the SIP for reductions from those facility-based measures will entail quite a bit of work. So I would say that's one of the key reasons that I and our staff are going to be participating as closely as we can in those workshops. So, those integrity measures are things like ensuring that the reductions happen when they need to happen to get the credit in the SIP, so that there's a time component of it, that there is a way to ensure that they can be quantified and accounted for, and that the reductions can be enforced. So those, and I think if you look closely at the resolution that the board adopted, along with the plan, both at the district governing board, as well as the Air Resources Board, it lays out some of the actions that will be done by the district and the state to ensure some of those components are met. I will say that that we have had some successes in the state that can be looked to in terms of how we've successfully worked through this challenge. In one case, it was Rule 9610 in the San Joaquin Valley. Another place in the state where providing SIP credit for incentive-based measures is a small area up in the northern Sierra, Portola. If you'd like, I could talk a little bit more about that, but in short, it's an area, a very small PM 2.5 non-attainment area, where it's very clear that the primary source is smoke coming from wood stoves. So the key to ensuring that the PM 2.5 standard is met is to work with individuals and to provide incentive funding to help them get cleaner stoves and trade those out. So that is what the SIP entails, and it's before us here at EPA. So that's kind of a key place where we're going to be really coming up with the policy direction that may be applicable to the analogous approach in the South Coast.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Any other,
Joe, when there's a moment, I have a question.
sure, Bill, jump in.
Thanks. So Amy, you mentioned your review of the reclaim program and amendments. What, is it similar to an AQMP? I mean, what are the potential actions we should expect from EPA? And basically, I'm wondering, do you have the authority to amend the program, or is it an approve or reject, or is it partial approval? What types of things can you do with something like reclaim?
We cannot make any amendments. We act on what's been submitted to us, which is an amendment to the SIP, and we'll be evaluating whether the Clean Air Act requirements are met. And as I'm sure, that was Bill Quinn, I think, if I'm recognizing your voice. You know, you can look at past actions, and it could be a proposed full approval. It could be a proposed partial approval, partial disapproval. It could be a proposed disapproval. And as you know how the process works, we will put forward a proposal, take comment on that, and then depending on what kind of comments we get, we can either revise our action, go out with a new action, or finalize our action. So that's, yeah. So to stay tuned, I'd say we're hopefully going to get something out in the next, just shortly, and I don't know whether that'll be within the month or what have you. For all these rules, we're working through our headquarters to get approval.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yes, Dr. This is Ronsheng. I have two questions.
Sure.
For Amy. Yeah, hi Amy, this is Ronsheng with SCAQ. I'm a little bit relieved to hear that EPA has been working with ARB and the Air District to resolve the sanction clock. As you know, one of those sanction clocks, the highway sanctions. And also you indicated you hope to take action shortly. On a separate, you mentioned you also plan to take actions on the reclaim. So I'm just curious, are these two related? Because if I remember correctly, the sanction clock related to the 2010 reclaim?
Yes, you are correct. They're related.
So I assume it's both approval, there's no issue, but it could go one way or the other?
Yes. Yes, it could go one way or the other, and I'm not going to indicate one way or another. I would say stay tuned, and I would say I would hope to be able to update you at the next Home Rule Advisory Group meeting. But you are correct. I didn't mean to be just short on that, but you are correct that our disapproval of the plan for the 2006 standard was predicated on some of the concerns that had been expressed with reclaim. So if we can move forward to resolve those, that will help resolve the issues that we had with the disapproval of the plan.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. My second question regarding the area designation, I understand that EPA is still in deliberation, but is there any statutory deadline that you have to finalize the area designation?
Well, the way that the law is written is that once we get the governor's letter, the next process, we have 120 days to issue our initial, forget the official term of its determination, but our initial designations, and then there's a process where the tribal members or the governors from states can provide additional information if we have new information and we need to change those. So that's the first is 120 days. It's not clear whether we're going to meet that 120 days. Under the Act, we have a year to complete the designations from the date at which we get the governor's recommendations. So that would be October of 2017. But there's also the ability for the administrator to take one additional year And should he decide to do so, and with there's some demonstration of reasons for that if he takes the additional year. So that would take it to October 2018.
All right, thank you.
Jill
Thank you for the question.
Jill had a question for you. Amy.
Hi, I just wanted to let the group know that what we're doing at the staff level, and I was going to cover this under stationary source, but I might as well talk about it now because it's relevant. There's a supplemental RACT analysis, and that's reasonably available control measures and reasonably available control technologies. And so that analysis is going to the Stationary Source Committee in May, to the board in June, and it will demonstrate or supplement the information that hopefully will be clear for the 2006 PM 2.5 standard and the 2008 ozone standards. So that's what we're working on. So if that goes to our board in June, then it goes to ARB. Hopefully they will get it expedited and off to EPA so that we can get this resolved before the sanction clock kicks in.
Yeah, let's hope so.
Thank you, Jill.
Sure.
Okay, any comments from the member of the public? None. Okay. Anyone else on the phone or at those places? Okay, great. Thank you very much, Amy. That was a much more substantive one this time around. It was really helpful.
You're welcome. Thank you, everyone.
We have Philip Crabb. Saw him come in. And we have a legislative update. There's been a lot of things going on in Sacramento.
Definitely. And so since we actually have, I can report on our April 14th legislative committee. We have a May 12th legislative committee that is happening on Friday, so I will have to do that at the next meeting.
Yeah, there's been some development since then. We're going to test you.
Sure, absolutely. I was prepared for that. Maybe not all of them, we'll see. Well, first there was reports on federal legislation, and I would definitely recommend, if you haven't grabbed the Leg Committee packet, basically there'll be written reports that are provided in the Legislative Committee packet from April. That's the baseline report. Usually there'll be verbal updates on top of that. So there was talk on the federal side, basically, that March 15th, US EPA and the US Department of Transportation put out their notice to review the emission standards for cars and light-duty trucks. The current emission standards dictate the fuel economy standards at 54.5 miles per gallon by 2025. However, the EPA had finalized the fuel economy standards in January for the years 2022 through 2025. But the new administration has announced that they will conduct their own review of those standards, which do not need to be released until April 1st of 2018. So we'll see what happens with that. And it was also reported that the current appropriations process was still addressing bills from the fiscal year of 2017, which started October 1st, 2016, and basically goes through September 30th of this year. So they're kind of behind a little bit. Congress had been operating on a continuing resolution, or CR, and had not passed any FY17 bills yet. And that CR was set to expire on April 28th. A little update not reported at the meeting is basically that there was agreements on an omnibus appropriations bill for fiscal year 2017 that goes through September 30th of this year. In the end, some of the highlights here is that there was a 1% reduction for EPA's overall FY17 budget. But that was much less than what was the 30% cut being suggested by the Trump administration in its so-called skinny budget that was released in mid-March. And funding for the Diesel Emission Reduction Act program, or DERA, rose $10 million from $50 to $60 million. And also the Targeted Airshed Grant Program, which received $20 million last year, will receive $30 million for the FY17 year. Also, it was reported that the current appropriation process was basically addressing 2017, but we'll look for 2018 appropriations process to be starting basically in May this month. And Trump's new budget is expected to be released in mid-May. So we'll see what to expect for that. Basically, the state legislative reports for April were all written, and there were no verbal updates. So I'll move on to bills. There was AB 1014 by Assemblymember Cooper regarding diesel backup generators at health facilities. and that would codify industry guidelines that direct health facilities to limit the tests that they conduct of their diesel backup generators and standby systems. And this includes the requirement that hospitals test their diesel generators just once a month for a half-hour period. The goal of this bill is basically to reduce unnecessary NOx emissions and things like that from too much testing. So the legislative staff recommended a support position on the bill that was adopted by a legislative committee and ultimately adopted by the board this past Friday. So there's a support position on that bill by the district. Then we have SB 49 by Senator President Pro Tem De Leon. That's basically this bill seeks to insulate California from rollbacks in federal environmental regulations and public health protections. It would establish current federal clean air, climate, clean water, worker safety, and endangered species standards to be enforceable under state law in an attempt to counter any weakening of federal standards. This bill also prohibits state and local agencies from amending or revising any of their rules or regulations to be less stringent than the baseline federal law, but does allow for those laws to go more stringent. It was reported that staff was supportive of the basic intent of the bill to maintain existing clean air requirements in effect regardless of potential future actions weakening EPA regulations or the Clean Air Act. However, CAPCOA member attorneys and other staff have identified a number of unintended consequences which could be detrimental to the district's operations. Districts would be required to adopt a wide variety of federal requirements, including new source performance standards, national emission standards for hazardous air pollutants, and prevention of significant deterioration permit programs, which would require significant staff and board resources to adopt, implement, and enforce. So staff basically was recommending that it would be more workable to identify certain key Clean Air Act requirements, such as the existing national ambient air quality standards and the obligations to attain such NAAQS by specified dates. And that would be incorporated into state law or as a general parameter rather than trying to impose the entire Clean Air Act and implementing those specific mechanisms. So at committee, the committee actually chose not to take a position on that bill. It did go to the board on Friday, and through board action, the work with author position was adopted. So that is the position for the district, and so we have the ability to go talk to the author and express the concerns that we've talked about here. Then there was a federal bill, HR 1090, relating to technologies for energy security. This bill would reinstitute and extend through 2021 commercial and residential installation tax credits for geothermal heat pumps, fuel cells, microturbines, and small wind and combined heat and power. This bill would also make stationary fuel cells and other clean energy technologies more affordable and help spur innovation. By establishing tax parity for fuel cell technologies, thermal energy, and combined heat and power and other technologies, treating them all the same as wind and solar, and that would help spur that development of technologies and not favor one technology over another. So there was a staff recommendation to support that bill, and that was adopted both by the legislative committee and by the board this past Friday. There was an informational item on SB 1 that's been touched upon earlier this meeting. And of course, that dedicates funds. So it was the big infrastructure package for transportation that was signed into law by the governor with a couple of trailer bills that funds transportation infrastructure repairs, as well as other projects that could potentially increase transportation emissions. However, SB 1
And decrease, active transportation's in there.
Okay. However, well, we had reported that SB 1 does not expressly dedicate funds to mitigate air quality impacts of goods movement included within the bill. It's unclear what the potential impacts of SB 1 could have on CARB's and AQMD's abilities to adopt emission reduction measures. SB 1 prevents CARB from requiring the replacement and repowering of commercial vehicle engines until the vehicles reach 800,000 miles or 18 years. Whichever is earlier. Also, there's or 13 years past certification of the engines, and that's for heavy-duty vehicles. However, SB 1 includes a statement in its legislative intent that states it's not meant to limit the authority of CARB in local air districts, and it was noted that the language is ambiguous, that it could possibly invite litigation in the future. However, also, I believe CARB and the State Department of Transportation stated that this language does not have an effect on CARB's or local air districts' indirect source authority. And one last thing, SB 1 also incorporated provisions of SB 174 by Senator Lara, which was mentioned at previous Home Rule and Ledge Committee meetings, that requires the Department of Motor Vehicles to deny registration to trucks and buses that do not meet CARB's clean truck and bus mandate. So basically just a better way to try to enforce that rule. That was just informational though. There were two proposed actions, legislative approval actions. One was proposed legislation based on amendments made to the 2016 AQMP, and that directed staff to seek necessary legislative authority to authorize AQMD to require accelerated purchase and turnover when use of near zero and zero emission heavy duty on-road vehicles for public fleets. There was also language provided at legislative committee to propose amendments to the bill that would clarify the definition of zero and near zero emission vehicles, and that would clarify that the air district would set those requirements relating to what would be considered near zero and zero, rather than fleet operators. Additionally, staff had secured a potential author for the bill that would be gotten amended to have this proposal put into it, and that was Assemblymember Mike Gibson, and the bill number was 8302. There was lots of action on that bill. Basically, the committee had some concerns about the language of the bill. They did not approve moving it forward. They asked to have it brought back to the May Legislative Committee. At Friday's board meeting, it was actually, the motion was made and action was actually taken to go ahead and take a support with amendments position on that bill. That bill did have a policy committee hearing up in Sacramento on Monday, but unfortunately it did not move past committee.
I think the author pulled it.
The author did pull it from the hearing calendar. So that is a directive from the board though, so it will be something looking forward that we will still be attempting to do in some way sometime soon. Also, the final item was another proposal for legislative action up in Sacramento, and this would be to work with the governor's office and the legislature to recover costs associated with a proactive region-wide toxic air monitoring plan to identify high-risk emitters of toxic air contaminants, similar to what was experienced in Paramount. AQMD would be asking for approximately $7.7 million per year to recover costs from these intensive air toxic programs efforts. So this proposal was adopted. There was a staff recommendation to approve, and the legislative committee and ultimately the governing board last Friday did go ahead and approve that proposal. So we'll be looking to move on that action in Sacramento in the coming weeks and months. And that's my report.
That has no number?
$7.7 million, and I believe it's per year, I believe for 10 years.
I know, but there is no bill yet.
No, that may be, it could be in the budget or things like that, but there's no bill right now for that.
David, then Art.
Question on the proceedings leading up to AB 302. I was scratching my head quite a bit on how that played out. That just hearing at Ledge, it was pretty clear there was a number of concerns that the legislative committee wanted to have ironed out. And I remember there's a discussion at Ledge that the question was posed, is this something that has to be dealt with right away? And the response from staff, as I recall, was something to the effect of, it's a gut and amend bill, there isn't anything pressing, it can be dealt with later. But at the governing board, it seemed like that had changed as far as it's more of an immediate situation that need to be dealt with to provide testimony on Monday. Is there anything more to that? It just, from my point of view, is providing feedback.
No, there is. There's an explanation.
Okay, it's just very hard as far as providing feedback and hearing, hey, it's going to go back to Ledge, and it goes off in a different direction.
So
how to provide feedback gets challenging.
An industry advocacy organization asked the assembly member to gut and amend the bill, despite the fact that South Coast hadn't taken a position on it. So he agreed to do it, and then there was a policy committee hearing in Transportation Committee scheduled for Monday, which left us without a position on a bill that had real impacts on us potentially. So it made it important for the board to have some input, or at least to give staff some direction on how to address this in a timely manner, because the hearing was scheduled for Monday, despite the fact that, it could have been gutted and amended any time.
Right.
But
And
it
that was
happened,
kind of
the
the
timing
other thing.
got a little
I don't know if this
sideways.
is just a coalition that you form as far as going in and lobbying, but I was kind of surprised that South Coast Language was then being sponsored by Clean Energy. I didn't quite understand how that worked.
It was the California Natural Gas Vehicle Coalition.
Right.
Well, so the governing board directed council's office to come up with language, which they did. And then California Natural Gas Vehicle Coalition decided they liked that language and asked Assemblymember Gibson to put it in the bill, which happened while we were still in the deliberative process. So the timing just got kind of screwed up on it. But now that it's been pulled by the author, it looks as if the chair of the Transportation Committee has some issues that need to be resolved. We're not exactly sure, I don't think, what exactly those are.
Is that something staff's going to seek another author or continue working with that author?
I think at least staff now has the authority to go into Sacramento and be involved and figure all this out, right? And we're just trying to bring the Fleet Rules Authority up to 2017 instead of having it be based on
1988.
methanol from
Anything but diesel.
more than 20 years ago, yeah. Exactly. So we'll see how it plays out. And adopting the AQMP was, it presumed we were able to do something like this in order to make it work. So if we're gonna get to attainment, we're gonna need some clarifications and updating to that provision of the Health and Safety Code. So that's my opinion. Assemblymember Marisucci had introduced a series of bills on refineries. One that I know is most relevant to what the board's considering is a potential ban on modified HF or HF use at the refineries, the two refineries that use them. And you know what happened to that?
My understanding is that bill is not going forward, or it was made a 2-year bill.
It's really good. Yeah, so the legislature decided to kind of defer to us on that. And we'll see if we can make a decision in a timely manner so that they don't have to actually do anything. One way or the other, after we make a decision, they might decide that they don't agree, that the Assembly doesn't agree with our decision, and then maybe he runs with his bill or something at that point. Art, I'm sorry, I jumped in before you could get your question or comment.
I'm curious to see where we're at on cap and trade and all the money that they borrowed for the rainy day and for the bullet train, and where we're at with Carl Moyer monies. What type of legislation was legislated? I saw you mentioned there was tax credits. What are they doing? Is there any legislation or anybody addressing the issue of trying to work with with those like schools and others that are going to be putting, we're upgrading all our AC units. So we're looking out for tax credit for some matching funds and for our AC units to more energy efficient, given that we take care of about 20–30% of the population. And we use the energy during sometimes peak hours, and then looking also for solar programs that we can work with. What is anybody doing the kids' business, I would say, instead of the people's business?
Well, in terms of cap and trade funding, that's going to really be, my understanding is that there's $2 billion of cap and trade type funding that is potentially available, but kind of on hold.
How much?
Pending $2 billion,
okay.
Pending whether or not cap and trade program gets reauthorized. And there's at least two key bills, one by Assemblymember Christina Garcia and also by Senator Wachowski, that's supported by President Pro Tem De Leon.
Where's
that
Garcia
are-
from? Is that the Coachella or where's?
No.
Southeast.
Southeast?
LA.
Okay.
So those are kind of two competing proposals. The governor may weigh in terms of having a sponsored bill. So that's going to be something just like it hasn't been in the past, where there's going to be a big negotiation amongst the Assembly and the Senate and the governor's office to try to figure out what is the reauthorization type vehicle and method of way that they extend that program. If that does happen, that will provide more security in terms of having the auctions through cap and trade that have been had pretty dismal returns in terms of money lately. Actually, for people to have more confidence to say, okay, this is a program that's going to continue. Now I can go ahead and buy some of these credits that won't just expire.
Well, the confidence for me is if I buy something with the intent that it's supposed to be going to those communities that are impacted, and I give it, it's like pirates in Somalia. You know, you go and you give them aid for rights and stuff, and then you find out that the warlords or the political warlords have gone and sold the rights for something else.
Wait, aren't you the warlord in this scenario?
Yeah, well, I'd like to find out where my 200 million is and the other that's been borrowed, and then the bullet train that's going nowhere. Is that money coming back? And if so, if that money is going to be allocated for Carl Moyer on 110 with the law, aren't you saying on one hand this is what was going to be used for as you pass the hat around?
So Moyer's separate. Moyer's
No,
separate,
but-
based
but-
on vehicle
well,
license
well,
fee.
it's
That
still-
one's set.
Okay.
Moyer's set, there's a vehicle license fee, it goes toward Moyer.
How do we
up through
how do we
2023,
guarantee?
And that money goes to clean trucks.
Okay, how do we guarantee that whoever's in there, and the governor's chair or others, does that money so whatever funds are set aside for whatever program doesn't get pickpocketed, or by legislatively or legal means or whatever, put into another fund for a so-called rainy day or catastrophe or collapses? Is there any guarantee on that when we work on the legislation? Or do we have to work the legislation in as advocates and ask that money not be encumbered or set aside? Or derailed, or, well, I don't know, how would you call it, still stolen, moved? I saw your eyes move, so when I see an attorney's eyes move to one side, it's question how you're gonna answer that.
For the end of your question.
Yeah, so how do you answer that?
Well, I'm just going to say, generally speaking.
Besides ethic and moral character of the individual, not
Yeah,
taking- can you legislate it or can you not?
Generally speaking, there's a lot of wiggle room in terms of how the governor and the legislature handle the budget. And a lot of times also when money is, it'll say, money, a bill may say money is to go to a certain purpose to be appropriated by the legislature. And that gives the legislature a little bit of wiggle room to sometimes potentially redirect those funds. In terms of rainy day, I'm not really sure. There's been money set aside. I don't know what the plan is for this budget. Usually gets to negotiations with the leadership and the governor's office in deciding how they want to allocate monies. But that's a general kind of concept. But usually when we have our smog abatement fee bill, for example, and our goal is to get more money to Carl Moyer. Could something happen that gets redirected to something else? That's not impossible to do, but we would hope that doesn't happen.
So the governor's May revise is supposed to come out today. I don't know if it's been released yet or not.
But do we have any programs that are addressing the issue of the bonds and AC units to their hand? If I'm putting money in and I can get matching funds because where a lot of us are doing is we've got AC units that are old and inefficient. If I can get more units that are more efficient, as such then I load I diminish the load on the grid. And is there any programs addressing that at all?
I don't know of any, but Edison may have something.
No, but I'm looking for
The California
policy
Energy
change.
Commission may have something, but I don't know of anything that pays for AC unit replacement specifically at schools or anywhere else. But I'd ask Edison.
I'm looking for some policy change in the legislature to help us out.
then you might want to get involved in the budget process, which isn't necessarily easy, because as Philip was saying, those decisions tend to be made by the leadership and the governor in a very small group of people. But that would be one way to do it. Jackie and then Bill.
I guess I wanted to get, and this kind of follow up to your question and the uncertainty of cap and trade funds moving forward. Is there any feedback? I know that there's all these bills addressing the certainty of the cap and trade program moving forward. We had AB 151, and I was trying to solidify that, and the lawsuit went away. And we thought that was more certainty that this program was going to be kind of continuing post 2020. And then this De Leon bill came out with which is fundamentally changes the program significantly, right, as we know it today. So just curiosity, does it have support or have any insight as to where that's going to go through committee and kind of timing on that? Because it's significantly, again, drastically changes cap and trade as we know it in California today, and then as we know it regionally with Quebec and Ontario and our, how it would kind of have this huge regional program. So I just thought, does it have a lot of traction? It's shocked the market, I can tell you that. There's been a huge price drop. Someone goes, oh, now uncertainty again. So, and what we keep looking for is with the certainty, then people purchase through the allowances, through the auction, and then we have, increased budget for the state to spend elsewhere. And so that's been very, the auctions have been undersubscribed or not purchased because the market's fearful that what's happening here, right? So, yeah, so just a little feedback there would be great.
Sure. I think in terms of the lawsuit, I haven't heard anything other than it's possible that I think the California Chamber is deciding whether or not they'll continue to take it to the next level to appeal the decision, because that did provide some temporary stability to say, yes, the program is okay, didn't need a 2/3 vote to pass, but they still may continue to litigate that. So that's an issue that's still floating out there. I think, it's hard to predict the future, but my general sense is that there is motivation and votes there possibly to extend the cap and trade program this year. But unfortunately, I don't think that will be fully determined until maybe near the end of the legislative year, which could be August.
Expect a very busy end of session.
Yeah.
Remember that both the governor and I think the legislature want to get a 2/3 vote through. That will not be easy with a controversial bill. But in terms of support, all you really need to know is that the President Pro Tem of the Senate supports it. And that's probably enough support to move it along quite a ways. It appears to me that a lot of legislators are sort of putting their marker down, and so that's what Senator Wachowski and De Leon did. I think that Christina Garcia has done the same thing, and Autumn Burke is kind of doing a little bit of that too. So there's several machinations of how it might play out in the end. But keep in mind that whatever happens is likely to be a 2/3 vote, so there's going to need to be quite a bit of consensus or threats in order for that to happen.
Dr. Luke, can I answer this?
Yeah, sure. We'll get the
Yeah, so there is an important hearing going on right now with Senate Environmental Quality. It's an oversight hearing on the cap and trade program. Wachowski is the chair. Mary Nichols has been testifying for the last 2 hours. I was watching it before your meeting started, and I noticed she just finished, but the hearing itself is still going on. For those who are interested in this, I would highly recommend that you catch the webcast, at least to hear what Mary has to say.
Anything new and exciting, Bill?
Yeah.
Well, I only caught the first half hour. I mean, I've been watching it, but I'm listening to you, Joe, of course.
Good answer.
And Mary talked about the importance of the 2/3 vote, and that is what the governor wants. And, we are here to see that occurs. So we're very, very much in support of extending the cap and trade program.
Yeah, but not telling the chair, Senator Wachowski, that he should go take a long walk off a short pier.
Well, I couldn't tell that from just watching her mouth.
Bill Lamar?
Yeah, to Art's earlier question about schools and air conditioning. My recollection is that your Clean Communities plan, Jill, had some money in it for to air condition schools, but that was in Boyle Heights.
I don't recall if that was.
Yeah.
It might have been air filters.
Or air filters.
Oh,
And
not the unit, just.
No, and sometimes when you put in an air filter,
You
you
redo the
have to
system.
do redo the system.
Yeah.
So it kind of might have been a corollary benefit for that, or an ancillary benefit, but it wasn't to replace air conditioning units. No.
Okay. I knew there was air conditioning
Yeah,
in
air
there.
filtration
Yeah.
would be what was.
And then the other
discovered.
question I had for Philip, you were talking about smog check here. That's been a topic of conversation. Has there been any movement on the proposal for a container fee? That was $35. Has that gone anywhere, or is that just?
Yeah, no, right now it's just an authorized approach by the board, but there is no bill right now at this point.
So it hasn't,
This year.
it hasn't left Diamond Bar then?
It's left Diamond Bar, but it hasn't landed properly in Sacramento.
Find a home orphaned.
I think we're also pursuing that at a federal,
Yes.
national level. So
It
we're
makes
talking
more
about
sense on a
schools.
federal or international level.
And would that include TEUs going in and coming out?
Yes.
Both ways?
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. So, a lot of interesting things happening on the legislative calendar. Any other questions?
Dr. Lou?
Yes.
Hi, yeah, it's Amy, Jennifer again at EPA. Phil, I really appreciate you summarizing where things stand with EPA's budget. One thing I wanted to just highlight that you mentioned is that the Diesel Emission Reduction Act funding went up significantly. It's now at $60 million nationwide. We have an active request for proposal out on the streets right now, and we're considering perhaps looking. Well, the request for proposal that's out there right now is for a total of $11 million, because that's what the agency had prior to there being a budget for us. So that's going to increase significantly. So we want to encourage anyone and everyone that has interest in applying, please do so, because the availability of funding will be significantly more than what the RFP had put forward. I want to highlight that. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Amy. Good news. Okay, any other questions or comments on the legislative update? If I'm tracking this right, it brings us to Bill Long and update on litigation items and related EPA actions.
Well, thank you, Dr. Liu. You have my status report. I have a few updates to the status report that we learned of recently. For case number 1, aircraft, we are in working out some sort of agreement to relocate one of the monitors. We're going to try to get it over this wall that they've erected, and because that might root out this lawsuit, they are willing, in addition, to dismiss the lawsuit, but we're still in negotiations about that. We had, for case number 2, we have had a case management conference last Monday, and the court has set a trial date for this case for February 27th, 2018. And related to that case, there have been a number of lawsuits filed against both Anaplex and a number of other hexachrome emitting facilities in Paramount, which the court is considering relating to this case. So it may complicate matters. There's also an outstanding class action lawsuit that Anaplex is looking to kind of relate also to this case too, which would further complicate matters. For case number 6, this is the case filed by CBE and Company regarding the board's action on reclaim. And the court, we have entered into an extended briefing schedule agreement with plaintiffs. The court has not yet approved it, but currently the way it stands, we may move the trial date to November of 2017. That's it for the legal updates. So I'm here to answer any questions if you may have.
Questions or comments?
On case number 3, can you sort of describe what that is about? I skimmed through this, and what caught my attention was, just as far as if this doesn't go well, there could be draconian contingency measures that might be
Yes.
necessary.
Yes.
What is that scenario?
Well, obviously, if it is not overturned, it would be kind of draconian because we have been relying upon these measures. And, I think we'll have to sit down and see what's going to happen.
Is someone challenging the way you have contingency measures for the AQMD?
Well, it's not particularly our measure, but has been other measures similar to that. And so it may set a bad precedent for us. So we are looking into that, and that's why we are trying to enter into a lawsuit there.
All right.
Yeah, there's a little strange logic when you put it all together in the Clean Air Act, how contingency measures are supposed to work, especially when you're dealing with extreme non-attainment. You really hold things back.
We can't really hold things back here.
Yeah. So if we're already doing everything, how are we supposed to have contingency measures? Yeah. Anyway, okay, any other questions or comments? Member of the public? We're not forgetting about you. Okay, outreach efforts. Lisa, thank you for joining us. Let's hear what you guys are doing.
Well, first of all, Dr. Liu and members of the advisory group, thank you for having me here to present on our outreach program. I am a community relations manager with Philip in legislative and public affairs. And this clicker's not working. I will switch to nice. Actually, it's okay. I just do arrow. Okay. So, legislative and public affairs and media relations, our outreach team looks something like this. All of us participate in community outreach as well as we partner with all of the departments in AQMD. But within our department, we have federal relations and legislation, state relations and legislation, local relations, of which it includes our 4 counties, 163 cities or city councils, numerous neighborhood councils and other advisory groups throughout the region. We also have media relations and graphics in our department. We are also responsible for most of the major events and external events that AQMD participates in or sponsors. We include the Visiting Dignitaries and Speakers Bureau, as well as the Public Advisor and Small Business Assistance Group. So what I oversee is the community and local relations team. Often you'll hear them referred to as the GEO team. We have 7 senior public information specialists, 1 public affairs specialist, and a secretary. We cover the entire GEO area of almost 17 million people. So we've divided it into 4 staff, which cover 86 cities in the Los Angeles County. We have 1 staff person who covers the 16 cities in San Bernardino, 1 staff person that covers the 27 cities in Riverside County, and 1 staff person for the 34 cities in Orange County. That being said, just because they're assigned to particular set of cities, we have devised a system to back each other up. At any given moment, the Orange County rep may have another person assisting her with different activities and issues, and vice versa. We've learned to sort of partner together to cover all of that area. So roughly, these are just a sampling of some of the outreach tools we use. Really, we found that even though times have changed dramatically, face-to-face meetings, boots on the ground, getting out into the communities, meeting with various groups is really the most effective way to bond out in the community. We also use digital tools such as email blasts, social media. We partner again with other departments on our events, marketing and promotions, and our website and other digital platforms have become really central to a lot of our efforts as we refer people back to our website often for information and for further resources. Oopsies. Sorry, I tried to do a fancy transition, didn't work out. Engaging with the community. So there's so much. I mean, I could spend hours with y'all, but I'm sure you don't want me to do that. So I've just kind of given you some examples of the types of organizations that we engage with on a daily basis. All of our GEO staff attend County Board of Supervisor meetings, City Council meetings, neighborhood councils, councils of government, MAC meetings, community meetings, all those sorts of things. They go to their transportation agencies and other kinds of meetings as required. If there's something air quality related or perhaps to network with a particular interest group. They regularly attend League of Cities meetings, which are a great place to meet all of the city managers in one place. We engage with the general public on a daily basis, in person, on the phone, via email. We do quite a bit with the K through college university educational organizations, schools, specific groups, working to do presentations. We work often with health and environmental organizations, environmental justice organizations, other types of community business organizations. And I apologize, I meant to count the number of chambers we currently are members of, but we renew those on an annual basis and we try and rotate them. And we also attend chambers even though we're not members where they allow us to. A lot of the subscription costs have really gone up, so our resources are quite tight, but we do try and be very equal among the 4 counties. So that's just kind of an overview of what we work with on a daily basis. I apologize, these are very tiny. So the types of outreach activities. So our GEO staff attend city council meetings and other government meetings. On a weekly basis, they're reviewing agendas and reporting back and discussing with cities different things that might come up on their agendas. We also work hand in hand with our transportation group, which is further down, on programs such as the 2766 funds, which go to the cities. We engage with interested stakeholders for different rural activities. So it could be we've collected databases and names and met people in the community who have a significant interest in a role, and we continue to educate them and keep them up to date on those activities. We work with planning on the Toxic Hotspots program, and those have really been increasing with the changes in the WEHA guidance policies. Last year we had 3 AB 2588 meetings, that's what we call them, so that would be like a Carlton Forge or a Hickson, where they're required to notify the community. So we work with planning from day one on setting up that meeting and then going out to the community so that they're aware of the meeting and understand why they should attend and how they can participate. We also work a lot with our engineering and permitting department on Title V meetings and sometimes other types of permit related meetings in the community. They might be very small. It might be a school that was notified, a 2202 notice that a facility is changing equipment. We'll go out, meet with them, make sure that they understand the permit. Last year there was only 1 Title V permit meeting. We do the town hall meetings. There were 9 town hall meetings and community meetings in 2016, and those vary. We went out to Long Beach, to Paramount, to trying to think of others, Aliso, Sunshine Canyon. There's a number of hot issues. We do a lot of events and conferences and symposiums, and that may be supporting other departments' efforts or holding our own. Some of our notable ones, our signature event is our Clean Air Awards, which is on an annual basis. We also have done some very targeted events, for example, Martin Luther King and Cesar Chavez have been going on for the last few years. And each year they have been basically sold out, if you will, and have been well received by the community. And last year alone, we did 65 community events. So that could have been like a health fair at a senior center, a small business forum at a chamber of commerce, a local government sponsored rideshare event. They're really diverse, and we do try and go to all 4 counties in an equitable fashion. Other types of activities we do, we support outreach related to the hearing board. Last year, I think, was unprecedented. There were 12 full hearings in the community. And if any of you have attended one of our offsite hearing boards, those are significant. From building the courtroom, if you will, from the ground up to going out to the community. We spend a lot of time educating community members on the hearing board and how they can participate in that process. We do presentations. Like I said, we have our Visiting Dignitaries and Speakers Bureau program. And last year, there were 43 Visiting Dignitary or Speakers Bureau events. And we'll go per request out to schools or Rotary clubs, businesses, all of those things. And we also invite folks to come here to the district to tour the facility. So we can take them to the lab. We usually do like a clean vehicle display. We'll bring in technical staff depending on their interests, whatever it is the need. We recently had Rio Hondo Community College here because they're interested in the clean cars, and they have a really innovative training program. We also promote programs, like I said, like 2766. We do outreach on all of the various grant programs, whether they're in TAO or planning, from the Lawnmower Exchange to Carl Moyer, Check Before You Burn. We promote our small business assistance program, kind of the gamut of things. So every day when the GEO staff are going out and meeting people, they are verbally telling our external stakeholders about these programs. If there's a flyer, they're delivering them, they're emailing them. All of that happens every week. We also do a lot of focused outreach on high-profile issues. We've had a number of high-profile things happen, ranging from Aliso Canyon to what's been going on with the Torrance Refinery, Paramount and the air toxics investigation, Sunshine Canyon, Exide. There are quite a number of them that we can list. And our outreach efforts range from educating and reaching out to all of the elected officials, other local businesses, the members and public residents, oftentimes teachers who teach at schools who maybe teach at the school in the community but live elsewhere. It's very wide ranging. And there's a new initiative, a relatively new initiative, where we are notifying city managers, and I think you guys brought this up at the last meeting, about notices of violation that are occurring in their cities. And so we have so far done 3 mailings, and let's see, just to kind of summarize, on average it's been about 33 letters going to cities, individual cities, and on average there's about 60 to 55 NOVs that we're reporting to the cities. Our staff have been taking an active role when they're out at city manager meetings, asking them, like, they know which ones have received them, and talking to them. For example, Deborah was just telling me that she was speaking with the city manager from Westminster who received an NOV letter and had many questions, and she was able to walk him through what it meant, how to get more information from the agency, etc. So that program is kicked off, and we're working with the city managers on it. Also, Derek Alatorre, our Deputy Executive Officer, personally went to all of the councils of government or large meetings like the city manager TAC meetings, where he could explain the program and provide his contact information in case there's questions. And a big interest to y'all is partnering with our small business assistance staff. So we visit our cities, and when we go out to chambers and such, and advocate for the small business program, let people know that the services are available. Some real quick statistics here. Last month, our small business assistance team provided permanent application assistance to 217 companies. They provided 4 on-site no-fault inspections, so those are free. They can come out and advise a business on things that they need to improve or to come in compliance with, and it can be like record keeping or equipment. And they also provided 35 clearance letters. So those are just kind of some of the programs. I failed to put down our Environmental Justice Community Partnership Program, which is a very large part of legislative and public affairs. We do focus a lot of it in environmental justice. Many of the 2588 toxic hotspots issues and some of the high-profile things occur in environmental justice communities, so we do pay special attention to them. So, kind of going fast, but it's a lot of outreach that we cover, but kind of like our motto is you never limit your challenges. There's many of them out there in the communities trying to reach a very diverse audience, ranging from language barriers, communities, different types of businesses, different political environments. But we just try and keep challenging ourselves and trying new things, whether it's social media or different types of meetings and reaching out to others for help to engage them in our efforts to advocate for the district and share what our programs are. So that's kind of the wrap of it. If you have specific questions, I can give more details about different parts of our outreach efforts, but it was sort of hard to do, like, this is one kind of outreach we do because it's always a hybrid. You know, we always have to adapt to the circumstances and the audience that we're trying to reach. So with that, thank you, and I see there's a lot of questions.
Yeah, Tyron, Art, and then Bill Lamar.
All right, first of all, thank you for your presentation.
Sure.
Thank you, Dr. Liu, for the agenda item for community outreach also. I did have a couple of questions, but I won't take too much of your time. The map that the community outreach plans that you have on, I guess, on page 3, for me, it would be interesting to see what areas are you guys targeting. And if and this is an ongoing thing, hopefully, in our group. If you could be specific on actually what's going on. Okay, we're doing something at this elementary school in this area, or do we have this event coming up in Los Angeles this month? Because again, I still have a problem with. I'm on a neighborhood council. I still have a problem with getting information in regards to AQMD. The only reason why I know about it because I'm here.
Right.
So when community members come to me with complaints about, for instance, we had an auto body shop issue. Another community talking about the possible gas leaks in Playa del Rey. They didn't know that they can contact the AQMD. Right. Again, it's like, really, these are really active community people who don't know the access that they have to programs like this. So it's good to have information that go to some of the elected officials, but sometimes they're so busy that it gets stuck in the shuffle, and God forbid if it's election time and some of these companies are actual donors to some of these people, we might not be able to see it. So my hope is with this, I hope that you guys will teach me and some other people here to say, hey, this is what you guys can do, call this. Maybe you guys can come out to do a community forum in some of the South LA areas, because people like me don't know. I wouldn't have known unless I was put on in this group.
Right. No, I completely appreciate it. And actually, you just articulated one of our biggest challenges is that we do, I think, quite a bit with the resources we have, but we can always do more. And one of the best ways for us to get our message out there is to have someone like yourself let us know, and we're happy to come out and do presentations for groups, for neighborhood councils. I know that our staff have been attending the larger empowerment congress for the neighborhood councils to try and pass out information. We had a table, and to go to those on a regular basis to share with more of the neighborhood councils what's available to their communities. And we do have a calendar of events on our website, although I know not everybody knows to go to AQMD, so how would you know?
Right.
So it's like word of mouth. Every day I'm so excited when I meet one person and they learn about our agency, and I give them as many pamphlets and pens and whatever it is to remind them to call our agency and to share with their community members. And so really, in your role as a member of the advisory group, we hope to sort of deputize you and to share that 1-800-CUT-SMOG and how to file a complaint, whether it's using our app or online or just calling our operators. Our operators, I had the statistics, they answer the phone every day, English and Spanish, and we're really willing and excited to be of service. So getting out there as much as possible.
Right.
And if you'd like a specific list of schools or presentations that we've made, I'm happy to provide that to you. Every month we do have a board letter report which kind of summarizes and lists the organizations that we have met with or engaged with during the month, and that's kind of a good source of information. How we do our outreach is that it's on multiple levels, so you wanted to know like what communities we're targeting. Oftentimes, we try to have a consistent presence as much as we can by going to those big meetings where our GO representatives can engage with elected officials and community leaders. But then we kind of go down various programs, like we have an environmental justice program, which Daniela Ariano is leading with Mark Carroll. And so they will go to different communities that have had persistent issues and expressed an interest to engage and work with the district. We also have issues that come up. Many times our calendars become driven by hotspot issues. For example, what's happened with Paramount has taken a great number of resources, not just that one person who is assigned to Paramount, but the amount of effort it has taken has sort of absorbed quite a bit of my GO team's daily work schedule. So it can be driven by a hotspot issue, a toxics program, a rule, Torrance Refinery comes up. So we're sort of always juggling our resources to try and cover as much as possible. In South LA, the petroleum-related facilities has been a very big issue for us, trying to keep in touch with the communities around Alamco and Freeport McMoran and all of those facilities and different things. We participated, we had the honor to co-sponsor with USC their recent Congress that they had, which had, it was really impressive with a lot of environmental justice and community organizations. So we try and look for those types of opportunities. So we try.
So are you trying to get a list of where the events are going to be?
Yeah, that would help me more. That way we can put them out. Okay,
So
they're
in
doing
the
a.
monthly reports, there's a list of the events that staff participated in. So a lot of them are annual events, and you can kind of see, oh, this is going to come up in this month. But the ones that's more detailed sort of calendar of what events you're going to be attending and participating in?
So it actually, I don't know if you subscribe to our app.
I have it.
But okay, so our calendar of events should be updating regularly on that. And if there's a particular event you'd like to see us at, then certainly you can give me a call. Actually, the next slide has my contact information. Give us a call and we'll submit a request. And we're always looking for new events, new communities that we haven't been to. So, yes.
Yeah, the biggest thing we do in South LA is we sponsor the Taste of Soul event every year. And for some reason, I can never go. I've been wanting to go for the 2 or 3 years we've been doing it. But I assume we have a large presence there.
We do. We have a large presence at Taste of Soul. And for that particular event, I actually kind of remember that we have 8 to 10 staff because the number of people that approach us and ask questions, and we bring cars out for the community to see and all kinds of things. But Taste of Soul is when we do a lot of the smaller community events as well, because sometimes you get some good one-on-one time. We're open to trying all types of events.
Well, that's good. You're open.
Yes, and specific presentations. The only limitation is that we have to have enough bodies to get out to all of them. But
well, the budget comes up next board meeting, so
yeah.
that might change.
Right.
We were open until the board passed the budget. Now we
enjoy it while we can.
Yeah, and some of those free events in the community are some of the most effective ones because they're really targeting people who may not have any knowledge of us, and so we really try and get out there. So sorry.
Thank you, Ms. O'Malley.
All right. Art.
First, I want to thank Joe because I've been pounding on you guys for years on is it OQ, the one where I had the dump site
Rainbow.
Rainbow,
Yeah.
and then.
No,
the
no,
other-
there's also the facility down in Orange County, right?
Is it Ethiopia or I can't?
Rainbow
Yeah,
services.
Rainbow, it's the same community.
No, but it's one of the Hexcron places.
Oh, Hickson.
Oh, that's a separate one.
Hickson is in
No,
Newport
that's a separate
Beach.
one. That's,
Yeah.
the Hexachrome is where my
Yeah.
grandchild's about a few miles
blocks
from
from
the
Hickson.
one close to Mesa.
Right.
And then the other one is where I had a couple of board members hit me twice over the last 3 years consistently at functions, because they know I'm on this committee to deal with the rainbow issue.
Oh, yeah.
That's another one. And then the other issue that you need to be aware of, and if you pull back your other slide,
Which?
this one. If I look at, one of the things that one of my congressional friends told me, if you're not on the table, you're the meal. And what I noticed, and it may be just a cultural issue, you talk about the outreach that you're doing, but you don't have the schools. There's 28 schools, 32 cities in Orange County. The schools employ more people, they service more people, and they have bigger budgets than the cities. I know the cities you are because you're tied on a regulatory basis by law, but also when you look at the representations in cities such as Orange County, we got continuous we've passed legislation over the last 15 years. We're continuously right now on voting rights cases as we go every month. There were 6 filed by the private attorneys over just alone this week on several cities and agencies. We're filing more as we go, and we're filing some federal ones as they come up against the county. What I'm saying is when you go to the county officials and you go through that venue, there's a cultural. It doesn't, if you look at the boards and the policymakers, they don't look like the communities they serve. As a consequence, again, we end up being the meal. Again, to echo to Tyrone's issue, is we're not at the table when it comes to the commissioners or appointees in these elected bodies. As such, there's a few of us that have been elected over the few years, and we've got the background, but we don't have internal ability to move staff and policies. I thank Alatorre because you guys did an outreach recently down in Westminster, one of those areas. And you just got a couple of union members on your social justice committee, and they pushed for that. But I'm kind of, after years, we end up having to litigate or it waits till a crisis comes up, whether it be Paramount or other areas, and then it's taken care of. Then it's mitigated. If you're truly a science cultural agency, then we should be able to identify the problem and not wait for it to arise.
So on the local government side of things, some of these things make it easier. The Council of Governments, League of Cities makes it easier.
You got it here, but you don't have it up on the other end.
So what I'm wondering, is there something comparable to a Council of Governments for the various school districts?
Yeah,
instead of having to reach out to every single.
There is, and the way I would tell you is you talk to the superintendents, and I can put you in.
They have a
Yeah,
group of superintendents
and the culture hasn't changed. Look, we pushed with Polanco and others just on health, a bill to get childcare.
Right, yeah.
We got 1,100 school districts. I got 5,500 elected school board members statewide. You know how many health clinics we got in the schools state out of the 1,100?
No.
Guess how many?
I have no idea.
Probably 1 or 2. Guess who's the only one that?
Well, I know there's one in Culver City because my mom was on the Board of Education.
Okay, then there's 2 or 3. And I'm the only.
In the 1980s.
Yeah, and I got it in 1996, and I got it through the Pete Wilson. No, I got it with Davis. When Davis got elected and I got elected, when Joe Dunn got elected, we got rid of a lot of the anti-immigrant guys. We were able to put a clinic in a little health clinic neighborhood. I got 23 or 24 now collaborative members, from Planned Parenthood to the chambers
So
and
is
other.
there a formal association of superintendents?
I would go to the superintendent because you go to the county, they're a pass-through agent, and that would help you there. And then you got an association,
But you have to pick them off one at a time, or is there a group of them?
there's a group of them.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and,
Yeah,
and they're, and you know how we are, all are, we're always looking for money. And we're always looking for somebody to mitigate some of the issues. And then you have one that deals with the managers that manage the money. And again, I tell you, we manage more money and we have more people than the cities do. We have more vehicles than the cities do. I have a proposal here that I got to lobby Joe at the end of this meeting for Carl Moyer. And I got a bus from you last time. I'm hoping to get a little bit more equity.
I wish I could personally hand out buses, but it doesn't work that way.
But there's, and what I'm glad to see is that you're finally with Electoral, you're doing the outreach. It's a hard cultural change. The Inland Empire and some of the other, I mean, we're dealing with I'm trying to think of a nice word, but it's the old South mentality, the old good old boy network. And thank God for death, because a lot of these people are dying and they're leaving office. And so we're getting new people appointed. And I saw that, but that's the only way we get change sometimes in some of these areas. But we need to get those changes. You have, I think, the culture here at AQMD now that you can move and you can start educating some of these people, because health issues affect everybody. We all breathe the same air. It's not political boundaries that determine whether the air moves from West Midland or down South County. And the toxic waste.
Asthma, I think, remains the #1 reason for school
Yeah, and I can work with you in putting
that. Districts,
so you can make the policy changes, and I think it's a long grinding.
So, do you have the information that you can send to Lisa or to send?
I can work with Lisa, and I'll put her in touch with
Let us know the group to contact.
the various groups. There's AXIA, there's at the state level, which is a lot of the superintendents. There's CASH, which is working on, they're the ones that are blocking horns right now with the governor on the matching funds with the bond issue. Those are things that we can leverage, so we can take a little bit of money here. You also have the community colleges that are working, that are looking for that. We've got the labor fed that Ada's on.
I think the things, that are really important for us, the outreach, obviously, the education of the administrators and the teachers and the students and the parents is vitally important. Like I said, #1 reason for school absenteeism is asthma, so if we can improve the air quality, reduce asthma incidents, all that would be good. The other thing that you mentioned that is really intriguing is the size of the fleets with the school districts. So, City of LA has just put out with a bunch of other cities a request for information from clean technology providers for
and I'll put you in touch with
the health. School districts might want to do the same thing. Say that if we collectively, put wanted to go to cleaner transportation, what kind of a price deal can we get if we do it on a larger scale? And then that could feed right into our
that's what I'm looking at right now for, we all purchase 1 or 2 trucks a year. We got, that's 28 trucks a third. Maybe the cities can't get together and can do the same thing. I know the post office is doing the same thing. But going back to the health and the kids, right now one of the big issues is autism. You go to the asthmatic issues, and then when you start looking at the asthma, the health issues, and you start looking at where the schools are, and you look at you can see the clusters, and that's concerning, because we're seeing autism and we don't know if it's related to the air quality, and one in 5 kids has special ed issues, so it affects social economically across the board.
And cost to the school districts.
Yeah, and cost to society and the emotional issues that deals with the children.
So do us a favor, get in touch with Lisa.
But I want to thank you guys for the outreach
Yeah.
that you guys are doing.
Yeah, but I think you can help, because you're more tapped into some of the how best to interact with the schools. I think, like I said, with the Council of Governments, you go to one place and you get the whole region of representatives in one place at one time.
Well, the city managers are like, they're like gods, or the city clerks, they manage the budget and all the other stuff, whereas in a school board, it's like herding cats.
Yeah.
Hey, Art, is there, I know in Riverside,
County, they have a Riverside County Office of Education that works with all the schools in Riverside County. Does the other counties have that?
Yeah, but the county board of education just basically acts as a bank and draws out your money. And they have some central programs. And then we go back to them for legal advice and policy advice and changes.
But it's not like.
Yeah, so what you really want to get to is the superintendents, the financial officers, the CFOs, because they're looking at the monies, and the facilities guys. There's three.
Yeah, there might be
three
an
guys.
association of facilities.
There's
guys
three
who
guys
leads,
that you want
which
to
would
go
be really
to.
interesting, especially in the context of, updated fleet rules and.
Yeah, and that's who you need to get to for AQMD, because it's taken, it's taken me 20 years to figure out the culture, because you got the cart before the donkey, and there's no rationale on working with government. Because you got budgets, you got to figure out a budget, and then you hope in May the governor gives you the money, and then you got to give notices in March if you're going to fire people.
That you're going to fire everybody, yeah.
So it's a hard mix from those of us that come from business, but we're rational. I hate to be sarcastic, but it's a very hard, it's a very hard culture to deal with. It's like bipolar.
Okay, Bill Lamar. You remember what you wanted to ask?
Actually, I do. I wanted to compliment Lisa on her Tony Robbins quotation. I bought a couple of his CDs, and then I figured out, I was making him wealthy, but he wasn't doing it.
You make some DVDs of your own and stuff.
Resist, right? I was curious, and I don't want to turn this into a small business meeting, but in your second slide, you show your outreach team, and on the next slide, you enumerate who your community and local relations team are. Can you tell me what the makeup is for the small business assistance in terms of people and classification?
Sure. So the small business assistance team is actually separate from the GEO staff, and that's a group of 5.
On the what?
The small business assistance team is actually a separate entity unto themselves that is within our department, and the geographic staff partner with them to go out to the various cities and chambers and other entities. Sometimes we'll go out with them to a facility if possible to provide that assistance. So the small business assistance team is headed up by our public advisor, Fabian Wesson, as well as Derek. And then Ricardo Rivera oversees that team, and there are 4 members of that team, and they respond to the phone calls and inquiries and do the no-fault on-site inspections and assist with permit applications and things like that and clearance letters.
So Ricardo
Rivera.
And plus 4 others?
Yes.
Plus 4 others.
Right.
They call it the Lamar team.
Actually, I've never met your public advisor.
Oh, Fabian Wesson, she's
Yeah.
fairly new.
Fairly new.
Yeah, she's fairly
Things have
new.
changed since the John Dunlap and LaRonda Bowen days.
Yeah, it's
whose names I'm sure aren't familiar to you. But
That really makes, the whole team should meet with Bill at some point, don't you think?
I think that would be great.
Yeah.
Actually, your
Absolutely.
presentation says outreach. So,
Right. I think that's a great idea, and so we work with SBA, and we promote the programs that they're working on. For example, there's the dry cleaner program. Philip is very familiar with it.
Yes.
I quote it wrong, but I know there's an event coming up in June with CARB in LA for that. So we will try and partner with them to spread their information as well. And I can connect you with Ricardo. I'm sure we would love to work with you. I know we worked a lot on CCP, and I just have to relay a small experience. So when we're working on the Clean Communities Plan, Bill was a member of the working group for both Wall Heights and San Bernardino. And as a
You
direct
happen to
result.
know that here.
He reported very consistently about it.
Yeah,
I
working
spent a
with
lot of
Bill.
time in the field.
Yes, he literally boots on the ground, like mapping quadrants and walking those quadrants with flyers, and based on the intelligence that Bill provided us on how to reach the auto body shops, how to reach, the different types of groups we're looking for. So,
Yeah,
I
it's
have
the ones
hands-on
that are off the grid we really want to identify.
One question that I would like to have answered though, you mentioned that in May, you issued 35 clearance letters. And I noticed back in April, you issued 19 clearance letters. I know what that process is, but I guess what's always, or what recently has confounded me, especially with the Paramount issue and everything, is when, in view of your issuing clearance letters to these facilities, how is it that the staff, and I guess maybe the governing board, isn't aware or hasn't become aware of what the operations are in these facilities? In other words, the permit applicant comes in, I guess it gets reviewed, and the clearance letter is issued. So something in here must say, oh, here's a metal related, here's a chrome plater or an anodizer or a body shop or something like that, who's going to be in this community at this particular intersection or address. And maybe it just gets filed, but it doesn't go to anybody else and say, hey, red flag. I mean, and this has been going on for decades, I guess. I mean, why is that?
So I may defer a little bit to Philip and Jill. SBA hasn't reported me, so I don't know the clearance letter process intimately, but I do know that there have been some revisions as a result of what we've learned in Paramount, and that now we have a pilot program with the city of Paramount when business licenses in the city of Paramount are up for renewal. They also are going to be reviewed by SCAQMD to see, check on the types of businesses, the types of processes, the types of equipment that they might be using that could require permits from us, or could kind of trigger, like you said, those
I've
red
been a
flags.
part of those discussions, or I've heard them in the auditorium. But again, this isn't new. This has been happening, probably many or all of those businesses that are now recently discovered or come to light in Paramount and maybe in other cities, I would assume have all been issued clearance letters in the past.
No, I think
the ones that are doing the right thing come to us for clearance letters, but there are a lot of facilities that we found in Paramount, and we're finding in others that are not following the playbook.
These are not just under the radar, but haven't applied for a permit and maybe even a business license.
Yeah, and some cities are more diligent than others about making them do the clearance letter with SCAQMD, and others just don't worry about it. So the GEO staff has been out educating cities and reinforcing that if you have a business license, they should get a clearance letter with SCAQMD, so we can make sure that we're aware of the facility. And then, lessons learned from Paramount, we're doing a lot more to outreach to cities to get their lists of businesses, so we can check it with ours to make sure that we're not missing everybody, because we want to level the playing field and make sure everybody's doing what they're supposed to.
I understand that, Jill, but again, from my being in the auditorium, I know that there was a big disconnect between the number of facilities with business licenses or paying business taxes, and then those that are on your permit list. And it certainly wasn't, the minority were ones that had no licenses, or they weren't even on the city's radar screen, much less yours, and I can see that, but that seems to be more the exception rather than the rule. So these folks have at least applied for that, and maybe it was the city that was contributing to this by not saying, you're starting a new business, you need to go with Diamond Bar.
It's not always a one-to-one relationship or correspondence. I think fully 1/3 of the business licenses in the city of Paramount, they're not gonna send to us because they're a home business, it's an out-of-state business, it's a contractor. So there's a certain number of them, and most of them will come here and they won't need a permit, but the ones that do, we wanna make sure that we're.
It just seems that there's a hole there that could be filled or should be.
Yeah,
We're working
for
on
sure.
that.
And we're definitely going out and educating the cities on who we are, what we do, working with our small business assistance team. I think within cities themselves, there's also a very big awakening. Recently, the city of Carson has approved a moratorium on new like warehousing, logistics types of facilities and some other waste types of facilities. And what was their wake-up call was they learned about a business that moved into a large warehouse and was storing toxic waste, basically. And they were very close to a nearby elementary school. And when the city found out and their code enforcement found out, they went in and took action and the business came into compliance. But it was a really big wake-up call for them on the permitting process and how to identify these types of businesses. So I think there's a lot of change occurring, and we're definitely listening and engaging to be part of that process to improve it.
Yeah, I've always been troubled with how we deal with these kind of land use decisions. And I mean, it is an issue of cumulative impacts, tends to be an environmental justice issue. I've always told people, you show me an environmental justice problem, I'll show you a bad land use decision. Because I've never seen an environmental justice problem that wasn't related to a bad land use decision. And this actually just came up yesterday with, the city of Los Angeles approving the construction of a very large warehouse right across the railroad tracks from Exide. Issued the permits, they just started grading, tearing down stuff and everything. It's like, not only is it right next to Exide, but it's actually in the direction of where our monitors were picking up the highest levels on a consistent basis. And, but the people, building and safety who issued the permits, they didn't know anything. And probably the planning staff who did CEQA on it probably didn't know anything either. And so, how do we do that in a way that is effective and efficient and comprehensive and also puts without infringing on local government's land use authority, saying, that's next to a school or preschool, and you don't want to put dry cleaners using perk. And 15 years ago, before all that happened, in those situations, you want to make sure that doesn't happen. There's a lot of complexity, and when you're an agency, obviously more appreciation for this now than I did before I was on the governing board. But when you're an agency with 76,000 permits, you can't do a comprehensive cumulative impacts review on every permit decision, even though in hindsight, sometimes it comes back and bites you. Because you have too many hexavalent and chromium businesses in a concentrated area near community members in Paramount. And it wasn't our decision. And in some ways, even Paramount says it wasn't their decision. It was the county's decision before they became a city. But those are, I don't know if there's any good or simple answer to that. We issue permits on a permit by permit basis, and as far as I know, no one in permitting is checking a box that says no cumulative impact issues or no environmental justice issues or anything like that when they're making those permit decisions. And certainly I don't think there's anybody at the, when you go in to get your permit as someone who wants to do something, for the city business license or a construction permit or something like that, that is saying, you got to check with SCAQMD or DTSC or the water board or somebody to make sure there's no environmental issues that need to be addressed, because it's not even where you're going to be located, but the surrounding people, like what came up in the Clean Communities Plan stuff and the Clean Up Green Up issues. Those are, I think, both less than ideal ways of getting at the problem, but that was what the communities were pushing for in order to get at the problem.
But it seems to me, if somebody comes in with a permit app, I've watched folks not that get along there. Yeah, again, they have an address. We have GPS, or Calipiro screen or anything like that. We're not talking days or hours, we're talking maybe 5 or 10 minutes at the most to bring that up, you know, and to see, does this fall in an EJ area? Or are there?
5 or 10 minutes times 76,000 is a big number.
Yeah, well, yeah, but, you know, what I hear from what I heard from Mosen, what I hear from Lockheed, you process about in the neighborhood of 7,000 permits a year, plus or minus, whatever.
Give or take, yeah.
Whatever that is. So, you know, again, you know, maybe it takes 3 minutes, 5 minutes, but it could be very well spent, all the way around. From the business perspective is, you know, now all of a sudden, instead of being employers, they're the bad guys. And from the neighborhood, right now it's another nuisance for them. And, you know, and so.
What would you have us do with that information though? Because what would you have us do with that information?
Well, and I think that's something that needs to be, we need to sit down and discuss rather than off the top of my head. But I mean, certainly that should be like a red flag, as Joe was saying. You know, here's something happening right across the street from Exide. If anybody has read a paper or turned on a radio or television, you know, they must.
How they missed that, I have no idea.
No.
But, you know, one thing is, it was the city of Los Angeles, not the city of Vernon, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you could at least hope to imagine that if they were both in the same city, you know, and you plugged in that permit address for this new warehouse, something would have popped up and said, hey, that's right across the street from Exide. But, you know, in this instance, you actually have to have people in the city of Los Angeles knowing what the big major issue and problem is in the city of Vernon.
And, you know, even I've had some small businesses of my own in the past. If I had known that, and I'm sure I can speak for my members, if they know that before they get a permit.
Yeah, you have to know that before you sign a lease, right?
Before you sign a lease, that's certainly gonna change their siting decision, you know?
That could be helpful. We do something like that for school siting, kind of a reverse analysis. You tell somebody, the school districts tell us, we're planning to site a school here, and then we look and see what's in the neighborhood and, you know, can advise them about freeways and other facilities that, you know, they may want to be aware of. Most of the times they say, thank you for the information, we're citing the facility there because that's where we can get the cheap land. And
but
so
do you tell them if you move the building, you know, 150 feet in that side and put the parking lot over there next to the freeway, it's a lot better. I mean, because that makes a huge difference.
It does.
You know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the other thing. It's kind of more nuanced than that sometimes, because you're right, the school districts have ultimate authority to do whatever the hell they want, and they go in and do it. And a lot of times, because the land is inexpensive next to the freeways or on contaminated sites, that's the land they purchase.
Maybe this is a conversation worth having then, you know, sometime in the future. I don't know, that's up to you guys.
Yeah, and Bill, if you, I mean, think it would be helpful for the businesses to know of this up front, I think we have ways of figuring out those kind of issues, like, you know, within the Calipiro screen top 5% or 10% or whatever criteria you're going to use, or what the ranking is within Calipiro screen for that particular location. We certainly have the ability to pull up on the FIND database where all the other permitted facilities are. There's Google Maps. You can just take a look and see whether, you know, hey, you've got this facility is right next to you know, residences are really easy to identify. But what I want to figure out is, how do we inform those people before they decide and start looking at citing their business at that location? Because by the time they come to us, they've gotten their, you know, all their permits, and they've already made their decision, they've signed their lease, and then they're just stuck with a big problem.
We're actually working on some of our website improvements on maps that you can do layers. And so there'll be a map that you could layer where are gas stations, where are perk dry cleaners, where are refineries, power plants, metal plates,
Does
whatever.
ARB still have that?
They have that for their greenhouse gas cap and trade program. Layered mapping. I'm not sure.
100 years ago, when we used to work on this issue at ARB, they had, I can't remember the database, what it was called at the time. But you could do
but
the
it's
perk
getting people,
gasoline.
and sometimes I talk to people who are saying, you know, I'm looking at buying homes, I want to buy one here Buena Park or here one in Santa Ana, what's the better for the air quality? So these maps could help, but it's getting people to know that that's something that they should look for, because by the time they're coming through the permit process, they have signed a lease, they've designed their facility if it's brand new, and it's really far downstream. So if they pass our permit requirements, then we give them the permit, but
So this
there's
is
a lot of
really
times
more
there's
of
things that
like
are,
a local government or,
yeah,
well,
land use guidance
planning
and-
departments or things like that.
But I think that we, as the air quality regulators, have information that would be useful. I just don't know how to set up the process so it actually works.
Is that something you can work with the local planning departments? You know, if you're going in for a development plan review, you can have a checklist if you're one of these businesses.
Yeah.
Go view AQMD or
Mark, do you
have a list
remember
of
what that was
services.
you came across? Remember that buried in the health and safety code, that, or there was something like you had to get local government had to review, I can't remember what it was now.
Yeah, there was a requirement that, might have been for conditional use permits that they had to be, or for a certificate of occupancy.
That's what it was.
Which would have been
For new businesses, you have to actually check off a box that AQMD's been consulted, right?
yeah, well, I think it was more than just check out the box. It said that the city needed to, ascertain that, it had met all the district.
Is that what the clearance letters are? Or is the clearance letter process something different?
Jill can speak more authoritatively than I can on the clearance letters.
I'm not
I'm
sure
aware
how
of
it
the
ties to
process,
this
but-
state law. I'm not sure how it ties to this state law, though.
No, that's
Yeah.
between AQMD and the applicant.
Oh, okay, not with
not-
the local government?
yeah.
No, this is something Mark came across, he sent it to me, and it was kind of interesting, it's like, wow, I wonder if they're doing that. And it wasn't what we were looking for, which is something different, but it did pertain to, certifications of occupancy.
I'm just saying that the clearance letter should be a red flag to somebody over here saying, go permit engineers, oh gee, let me bring this up and, rest home here, or school, or.
Yeah, or Superfund site, which
Superfund, right.
happened in Del Amo too, almost the same exact thing with Exide, they're doing construction on top of one of the Del Amo Superfund sites, and they didn't even know it.
And my understanding of the clearance letter process basically is that, the businesses will go ahead and submit a form, a form that we hand out to all the cities to talk about what processes and materials and things that they're using. That comes to our small business assistance unit, and if a permit is required based on our current rules, then we'll go ahead and direct them to start permit applications, the appropriate ones that are needed. If it's clearly that, there's something that there are no processes that we normally have a permit for, that's when we issue
That's when you
that
get a
clearance letter.
that you
so that
you don't need a permit to construct or a permit to
Exactly.
operate.
But even if you're a 219 or 222 facility where no maybe just registration, you still get the physical location where it's in operation.
They have to tell you where they're physically located.
Yeah. I mean, you're getting that all the time.
Well, Bill, I'd love to be able to work this one out, so let's keep thinking about it. I don't know, maybe there's a local government guru who could figure this out for us, how to do this properly. So I think there's a lot of businesses who, if they know what they know now, would not have made the same decision, right?
Oh, yeah, sure. And it's hard to, if you make a bad decision there, to get up and move again. I mean,
Yeah,
that's very
and it's
costly.
really, yeah, exactly, yeah. And it's, and there's no justification for incurring that cost once you've already gone down that road. Okay. Other questions or comments on this? Okay. We lost our member of the public. Lisa, thank you so much. This has kind of been an outstanding issue. It's come up in different ways, shapes, and forms for a very long time here, so it was really helpful to learn all this stuff. Jane, do you have anything on consensus building?
I just have one information item. We had talked a little bit about
possibly going and seeing the CR&R facility in Paris.
Oh, right, yeah.
I toured it last week. It's awesome. They take green waste, they create energy, they fuel probably 100 of their trucks, go out, pick up trash, come
Eventually
back.
more.
Yes,
Yeah,
and it's
eventually
going to
more than
grow.
probably all the solar trucks.
It's a pretty impressive tour, and so I'd like to offer if there's people that are interested. I even talked to his name's Michael Silva. He does the tours. He's been there for quite a while and knows the project very well. If we would like to do a tour with this group, I can set it up.
Yeah, with this group, it's complicated to do tours because of public meeting laws. But if
Oh, that's right.
individuals want to go and lessen a quorum of this group, and I mean, they do them all the time. It really is pretty remarkable. You get to go to Paris, different Paris.
Yes. my office is on the other side of the freeway, so I work in beautiful downtown Paris.
But what they've done is, I mean,
it's
it's mostly because there was a really aggressive waste minimization law that was passed. But they've done it in a way so that they're generating renewable natural gas and they're using it in their own fleet. And it really is incredible.
And they're actually tying into the grid now too, so that's
Yeah.
even another interesting thing. And the complexity of what they've
Don't
done.
ask them how much they had to pay the gas company to do that.
It's very expensive because Eastern's been looking at it as well. It's very expensive, but they do have some really unique ways of creating this renewable energy, and they're kind of the first ones out of the chute in a lot of areas. So a lot of lessons learned. So we're very interested in what they're doing.
And these large digester facilities are going to be coming online because of the law that requires municipalities to reduce their waste by so much.
Correct.
So they're not going to, they're the first, but they won't be the only ones. And they've got this, I guess, a licensed agreement with the manufacturer of some of the technology, and so they kind of have a bit of a monopoly on doing it the way that they did it.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, so it's going to be really interesting
Yeah.
to see what happens next and where.
So if you're interested, get in touch with me.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff.
It is pretty great what they're doing. It's like green waste, and I believe they can take some food waste. Right now,
Oh,
it's all
absolutely.
green waste.
Yeah.
So
Food waste is good.
yeah.
They're also, yeah.
But
they're
they
taking some
take
liquids.
waste from, the waste comes in from LA County, Riverside County, all to this one facility, so it's quite large. But it's very impressive, really clean operation, they're doing a great job. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah. I don't know how much of a consensus we can build around it, but I would hope we could. It checks a lot of boxes.
Yeah, it does.
I mean, what they say is, you couldn't do it in the middle of a LA city.
Right.
You might be able to do it in some of the industrial areas, but, and so transporting all that stuff out somewhere, that becomes a little bit of a burden and an issue, but if you could centralize it, it would be good, but it's really big, so it's not kind of the thing you really want to see in the middle of your nice city, but.
And the odors are not
No, it
offensive,
wasn't bad
there's
at
no
all.
odors, but it has an industrial look, but where it's located for us, it's right next to our treatment plant. It's next to a train station, it's in an industrialized location.
Yeah, it's not a bad area.
Or Jane, if you could throw in a high air balloon ride for us.
That's right there as well, so. Yeah.
Okay.
Let me know.
All right, thanks, Jane. Anyone, questions or comments? Okay, subcommittee reports, freight sustainability, Dan?
Sure, and to kind of tag team Jane on her CR&R item, so the CEC is holding its business meeting today, and they have a number of items that they're on their agenda to consider and hopefully approve, and one of them is a $3 million grant for CR&R to expand their
Yeah, they're still trying to raise money to do the rest of it, yeah.
Right, so that's on it. The others are regarding sustainable freight transportation projects. So the CEC is looking at, there's 3 grants here for the City of Long Beach, City of Los Angeles, and South Coast on, and I think Long Beach Harbor, 10 million, or just under 10, South Coast 10, and City of Los Angeles Harbor Department, like 4.5, but all to implement programs for zero and near zero technology. So that's all on today's agenda. Another item, it's my understanding that in the next 2 months, I don't know exactly what the starting date was, but pretty recent. The state's looking at how to divvy up the $420 million for dedicated from the VW settlement for NOx emissions. So I would assume the district's working with the state on that. And I was going to ask, are you guys have any plans to try and rally other stakeholders to advocate also about trying to get, more of that money, I guess, down here? Or
I'm not sure if this is the same pot of money, but South Coast, San Joaquin, Bay Area, and I believe Sacramento put in a proposal to do some EV infrastructure charging throughout the state. But I'm not sure if it's that pot of VW money. There was also another larger pot as well.
I think this was money, yeah, I'm not sure. I thought this was maybe different.
It might be a separate pot.
From the original electrical stuff, I think.
Yeah, there's one pot that's strictly focused on, it's more managed by VW and it's more for infrastructure. And I think there's another pot that can be more used for heavy-duty trucks or other things that CARB can have a little more say. Or some governor-appointed agency can have a say in how it's spent for the state.
Yeah, this says it's dedicated, it's earmarked for mitigating NOx emissions.
That might be the second one. So I'll have to check and get back.
Yeah. Okay. And then there is a meeting on May 30th, excuse me, on implementation of the California Freight Sustainability Plan. I don't know what, I assume going to just update whatever implementation act is gone since the plan was adopted, but that's coming up.
That's downtown?
Downtown LA at the Caltrans office. That's all I.
Port of Los Angeles, Port of Long Beach are still working on their Clean Air Action Plan, so that certainly has a freight component. There is money in SB1, I forget what they called it, that could be used for clean freight. 400 million. What, do you remember what they called that pot? Is it freight transportation?
The corridors?
Maybe, yeah, freight corridor. Yeah, exactly. So there's money there too. All right, Bill Lamar.
Bill has no report. He told me to report it.
Okay, no report. EJ, Kurt, you probably have to report, and I hope you've gone to this website, California Clean Climate Investments.ca.gov, and have a report for us on that.
I don't.
Are there any other EJ report?
No.
Okay. I can't think of any myself. David?
No report beyond what was discussed already, but if anyone has any subjects they'd like me to look at or maybe have a separate meeting on, please let me know.
Yeah, I think the only thing to do is to, for sure, is to track what's going on with those greenhouse gas investment funds.
There's a lot going on.
Right, and there'll be a lot between now and our next meeting, so we'll have, by the time our next meeting, pretty much guarantee we'll have a state budget. It's funny how ever since they started docking legislative pay, it gets passed on time. Purely coincidental, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments on the subcommittee status reports? Okay. Stationary Source Committee, did we cover everything or did you have other stuff?
Just a couple things real quickly. So in April, there was a report from staff about the tert butyl acetate or TBAC, a white paper and a draft assessment. And they had some suggested options for how to move forward with rule development for Rule 1113, which is architectural coatings, and Rule 1151, which is auto body spray stuff. And basically, after a lot of discussion, the committee recommendation was, let's wait until OEHA goes through the whole process and gets a finalized potency factor for TBAC before we decide if we want to change any of our rules. So that was basically that. That's going to next month. There were updates on proposed amendments to Rule 1147, which is our miscellaneous NOx kind of catch-all rule, and proposed amended Rules 219, which is what equipment does not need a permit, and Rule 222, which is filing, and both of those rules went to the governing board last month, and there were some actions on passing those. So at the next meeting, I already talked about the supplemental RACM-RACT analysis for those ozone standards. There's also a new source review compliance demonstration related to a 2008 ozone standard. And then there'll be some staff presentations and I'm sure public testimony on proposed Rule 1118, which has to do with reducing emissions from refinery flares.
That's
And
proposed amended rule.
proposed amended rule, thank you, yes. And then proposed rule, new Rule 1466, which would get to the situation that Dr. Liu was talking about, where they're excavating across the street from Exide. So this would be proposing requirements for decontaminated soil excavation for a short list of toxic air contaminants. And that's my report.
Okay, Kurt?
Yeah, just I don't know who to make the request of, but there was an 1168 workshop today at the same time as this meeting, and it's very, I can't be in
You
two
chose to
places
come
at once.
here?
I chose to come here. But, you know, if it's possible to schedule working group meetings at a different time than home rule, because many of us who come to home rule often want to show up at those working group meetings too. Some of us wear more than one hat.
That's VOC rule, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And look, Mark chose to be here too, instead of that.
He's gotta keep an eye on his boss.
VOC is like, no one gives them any love anymore. Right? Okay, any questions or comments other than that? How about on other business? Anyone been waiting to raise any issues that they haven't raised yet?
On the attachment 4, there was a
great.
handout. What is this pertaining to that was?
Yeah, that
Is that the police
Discussed as AB 3.
Yeah, it was a police rule.
That's what ended up in Gibson's bill, basically. But there were amendments proposed when you went to committee, so it's not one vehicle, it's 15 vehicles.
Yeah, the board finally
And then
approved
he
it.
incorporated it, so,
Right.
yeah.
And that's the other question. I'm serving on a technical committee for the Energy Commission. I know I emailed you earlier in the year because they were trying to put together, it's mainly government agencies that are looking at how catastrophic fire or flood would impact the transportation fuel sector in the state. So one of the questions was, you know, and some of it comes from the governor's office for issuing waivers, but if there's an event in Southern California under AQMD's jurisdiction, what's the process for getting waivers or regulations in the event of a catastrophic fire or flood? Most of the agencies that were invited to this meeting back in March, I think there's 120 invitees. Yeah, 118 of them were public works or other county.
Yeah, they have the authority, but based on a declaration of emergency from the governor to actually waive requirements.
And what if it's not a statewide issue, but just a Southern California issue? How does AQMD waive?
Well, the governor can still issue a state of emergency in Southern California, I would say.
Okay. I'll get a little more info from you on that.
Which reg is it? Is reg?
Kind of what reg it is.
Reg 1?
I think I'll see if I can find it.
Okay. And that's also in health and safety code, right?
I don't know if it's in the health and safety
Yeah,
code, but we used that actually during the electricity crisis. We actually waived the reclaim rules because of some concerns about exceeding NOx emissions.
And pulled the power plants out of reclaim.
Yeah.
Because one of the other issues, you know, back in the East Coast after Hurricane Sandy, they're requiring some service stations, you know, to put in generators so that they can get fuel out of the ground. But if there are generators that are out of compliance here, you know, would the waiver cover those to put them back in service to help get fuel out of the ground to service emergency vehicles or water districts or hospitals? There's a number of questions that they're starting to raise.
So it's Rule 118, and it's called emergencies.
take a look at the rule language that might cover it.
So it includes water agencies too, water utilities that.
I don't know if they were on the invite list, I'll go back and
Okay.
look, because it's it's being coordinated
And
through UC
Then
Berkeley.
within certain rules, like we have a rule that limits how much you can run your diesel generators and things like that, your backup generators. But obviously in emergencies, I think there's language within those rules that says, you know, when you're using them for what they're made for, you go ahead and do that, right? I think, so within certain rules, there may be exemptions that are built into those rules. The thing I was gonna mention was last week at the ACT Expo, Matt Miyasato introduced me to a guy who was with his company that builds modular solar charging units that are not hooked up to anything. They bring them in, they plop them down, it's a solar panel based off the longitude and latitude. They plug in how the panel moves and tracks the sun during the day. And they can charge, I think he said 4 or 5 cars off of this one panel. When it's big, but because it's not hooked up to anything, you don't have to have permits, and it's considered temporary, and they're doing them in a lot of places. But he was talking about how for emergency services, it would be really helpful. And one pickup truck had been proposed several years ago by Via Motors, but there was another one called Workhorse at the ACT Expo that is, basically a heavy-duty pickup truck that had the built-in plug to export the power out of the batteries, and it was a plug-in EV, so it would go about 40 miles or so off the electrical charge, but they have a lot of battery power. And I was thinking, if you have these portable solar charging stations, and a pickup truck like this, you could at least, in an emergency, keep the signals working. If you properly prepared for it. So those things can come up. It was rather kind of interesting. And I know that after Sandy, Martha told me about how many fuel cells are now being used was it for the communications, or was it, I thought it was, right, it was for mobile phone.
Yeah, this was actually in Florida.
In Florida. Oh, after
Florida, all
hurricane.
those hurricanes, they had one right after another.
And so
And they would have to go 2 or 3 states over in order to get diesel fuel. So they developed a plan to start using fuel cells.
Yeah, so there's a lot of potential use for alternative technologies.
Yes, if we have the big earthquake here, it's gonna be weeks before there's fuel supply, so you need to have your own supply on site.
When we had the rolling blackouts in 2001, you couldn't get a generator. And they were all leased out.
All gone. Okay, with that heavy dose of paranoia, we can go to public comment, but I'm not sure there's any members of the public anywhere. And to adjournment, our next meeting is scheduled for July 12th here in CCA. Thanks again for coming. We do have lunch. Please help yourself and enjoy. We have filet mignon and lobster. Those folks on the phone, I'm sorry you can't be here for it.
Nice crisp Chardonnay.
Yeah, crisp Chardonnay. Desserts were amazing, cheesecake and creme brulee and some really nice fudge and chocolate. Sorry you can't make it, but maybe next time you'll show up in person.
Just seen it was great. Fake news.
Okay. See you guys later. Right.
You don't know. I think that the business card, but so let me send you a quick email and definitely.
That's one of my hats I wear.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
We definitely in fact we have a
rush
new
down the path, continuing over the options.
Get your answer on the
Why change everything?
Evidently, they got an NOV right away. Future cost. Yeah, well, anyone analyze that cost?
It was saying that the auction instituted an illegal tax, since they didn't have a 2/3 majority.
Yeah, and
And
the
they
fact
set it
that DTSC just cleaned up a bunch of houses right there?
The mechanism in which they.
I know.
First of all, if they cleaned up the houses, that means they had to be at levels that were scary to DTSC. Right?
Yep.
And,
But in fact.
I doubt if the lead preferentially deposited itself just on those houses. And now they're probably all
May
contaminated.
go to the Supreme Court. That would be something to see. This, legislatively is causing all the risk of the issues now. Is that what happens post implementation of this program? People are reluctant to continue to invest. If you're in Tesoro and you have to buy, you're not gonna buy until you know you have to, right? So it makes you nervous that perhaps what's gonna happen.
So, you know why they're
And they've got the supply. They're trying, yeah. But then this new bill changes the program so drastically, it also causes quite a bit of concern, so.
Yeah, it's a whole new program.
Yeah,
No
I didn't
allowances.
expect, it's so interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's backing this one. You know, I was at a carbon conference with, a meeting of minds the week before, and we kept hearing things and stuff about this price ceiling was gonna be proposed, and
Okay,
that
perfect.
blew me away.
Appreciate it.
And in fact, it's gotten so much press and action. I just,
Well, it's
I think it's
President Pro Tem and
the authors,
and
right?
the authors, yeah.
But it doesn't,